Reconciliation and the appraisal report. What's reconciliation? Reconciliation is the step in the appraisal process in which the appraiser reconciles the estimates of value received from the sales comparison, cost, and income capitalization approaches to arrive at a final opinion of market value for the subject property. That is, assuming that we can apply all three approaches. Reconciliation, though, doesn't require us to apply all three. We're going to apply as many as possible. And that means that when we do so, we will most likely have more confidence in one approach than in others. And that's where reconciliation comes into play. However, in a more general sense, we've been using reconciliation all throughout this class because reconciliation also refers to the process of analyzing two or more value indicators and determining a single value or maybe a range of values that the appraiser feels is most appropriate based on all the evidence. The process can occur whenever the appraiser needs to derive a single value from a number of value indicators. So it's more than just in the case of making a final value opinion. And for instance, when we applied the sales comparison approach for owner-occupied single-family housing, when we applied our adjustments, at the very end, we came up with an adjusted sales price. Oftentimes in our textbook examples, we ended up with all our comps having the same adjusted sales price. But in the real world, when making adjustments, that's not always the case. So when we have to come up with a value indicated by that particular approach, by the sales comparison approach, we will lean more heavily on that comparable that required the least amount of adjustments. When we applied direct capitalization and we needed to find an overall capitalization rate, oftentimes we maybe took an average, or maybe we used an average if we felt confident that all our comps were equally reliable. But there were times when we were deriving a cap rate where maybe we got rid of the outliers because they skewed our estimate of the cap rate, and we used what was closer, where those rates clustered together. And even when we were estimating unit costs, unit construction costs for an improvement, we used reconciliation as well. So consequently, reconciliation is required virtually every time comparable sales data is used in an appraisal. Reconciliation may also be required when different units of comparison are used. But back to reconciliation as that final step in the appraisal process. The appraiser considers the definition of value that's sought, the amount and reliability of data collected in each approach, as well as the strengths and weaknesses of each approach depending on the type of property, and finally the relevance of each approach to the subject and market behavior. So here is where the appraiser uses a lot of his or her knowledge and experience to be able to reconcile. So the process has some subjectivity involved. But what reconciliation is not, it is not a correction of errors in thinking and technique, so it's not a way to make up for lost ground or for any previous mistakes in the process. It is usually not merely an averaging of values, and it's not a narrowing of the range of value. So an appraiser can either come up with a point estimate or a range of values to present to his or her client. Most of the time, appraisers state the final value opinion as a single dollar amount. That's known as a point estimate. An alternative is to suggest a value range, where this is in which an appraiser's opinion of the range in which the property's value is most likely to fall. Of course, a value range offers some sort of leeway in that it's not a point estimate, but at the same time, an appraiser, so they're not pinpointing the value to a particular dollar amount with a range, but at the same time, the appraiser has to make sure that if he or she is going to offer a range to the client, that the range is not so wide that it becomes ridiculous and the value range is meaningless. Appraisers also usually round their estimates. Now, certainly, we don't need a class or a lesson in rounding numbers, but there is some customary uh, there is a customary way in which appraisers approach rounding, in that in general the figure that's offered to the client will have no more than 3 significant digits. So the first 3 digits are significant, and then followed by the appropriate number of zeros. So if we're talking about a property in the hundreds of thousands of dollars value range, those first 3 digits are significant. Last 3 would be zeros. If we're talking about something in $1 million range, again, the $1 million, $100,000 place, and the $10,000 place are all significant digits followed by zeros. Anything more than that, anything that has more than 3 significant digits, that would imply a level of certainty as to exactly what that property's value is, and that's just unrealistic. So first 3 digits, significant, then followed by zeros. In terms of appraisal reports, U.S. patent, there are 2 different styles of written appraisal reports. The first is the form report, and the form report could be classified as either a summary or a restricted use report depending on the level of detail that's presented. Form reports are usually used by agencies like FHA, Fannie Mae, banks, insurance companies for routine property appraisals. And the most common form report in use today for residential appraisals is the Uniform Residential Appraisal Report, or the URAR. If you click on this link, you can see an example of this. The second type of written appraisal report is the narrative report. That is the most thorough presentation of the appraiser's assumptions, data, analyses, findings, and conclusions. So it gives the client not just the facts about the property, but the reasoning that the appraiser used to develop the opinion of value. And the narrative report is usually classified as a self-contained report. And if you click on this link, I found this narrative report all over the internet. So if you're interested in seeing what a narrative report looks like, you can find one here.